Rome believed they were safe. The Alps stood between them and their enemy. No army could cross those mountains, not with tens of thousands of soldiers, not with cavalry, and certainly not with elephants. They were wrong. Hannibal Barca was 9 years old when his father led him to the altar. A boy, standing in the torchlight, swore before gods and men that he would never be a friend to Rome, not in peace, not in war, never. The oath burned into him. A promise of vengeance, a mission inherited, not chosen. Years later, that vow became an army. 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, 37 elephants. The numbers staggered even his own officers. Polybius, the Greek historian, records the tally. Livy, writing later, repeats it with awe. Rome's spies counted the columns and sent word back. This is not a raid. This is an invasion. Hannibal's force was more than men and animals. It was a weapon forged from Carthage's anger. Veterans who had fought in Spain's dust, Numidian horsemen who could outpace any Roman patrol. Engineers with siege tools. African elephants trained for terror as much as war. Each one a symbol of power, of defiance, of a promise kept. He gathered them at New Carthage. Supplies for 3 months. Grain, dried meat, wine. Enough to cross rivers, mountains, anything Rome could throw in his path. The baggage train stretched for miles, 5,000 pack animals loaded with weapons and hope. Every soldier knew the risk, every officer knew the cost, but the oath was clear, no turning back, not for hunger, not for snow, not for the Alpists themselves. This was the army that would try the impossible, the army that would make Rome afraid. The army that carried an oath across the world's hardest barrier. The march through Gaul is no parade. Every mile east from the Rhone, the column stretches thinner, weighed down by hunger and the threat of violence. The Allobroges, fierce and restless, haunt the riverbanks. They do not meet the Carthaginians in open battle. Instead, they strike at night, slipping between wagons, cutting loose pack animals, vanishing before the guards can rally. Grain runs low by the 3rd day. The men chew dried meat, scrape wild onions from the roots, and drink river water gone brackish with mud and blood. The elephants, symbols of power in Spain, become burdens here. Their bulk slowing the pace, their hunger impossible to satisfy. Hannibal tries words first. Gifts, promises, threats. Some chiefs take his gold and let the army pass. Others wait until the column is strung out and ambush the rear, rolling stones from the heights and sending arrows into the confusion below. The Caturigs, mountain people hardened by cold, ambush the baggage train in the narrows of the Isere Valley. Night falls with the wounded left behind, horses bleeding into the snow-melt streams. No Roman legion could inflict such misery. Here the enemy is faceless, hunger, cold, the land itself. Men die for a handful of barley. Pack animals collapse where they stand, their loads abandoned to the rocks. The army moves forward only because it must. By the time the foothills of the Alps rise ahead, the survivors are gaunt, hollow-eyed, and silent. Behind them, the lowlands burn. Ahead, the mountains promise worse. Towering, frozen, unforgiving. No one alive could say for certain which path would lead to Italy. Not Hannibal, not his scouts, not the Gauls who sold their loyalty by the mile. The Alpes were a puzzle, each corridor promising disaster in a different shape. Go too far north, too many days, too many tribes, snowdrifts swallowing men whole. Go south, steeper, colder, but shorter. The army paused at the foothills, surrounded by silence and doubt. Polybius sketches the mountains as a wall of white, broken only by narrow gorges and sudden drops. Modern scholars argue over the details. Some point to the Col de la Traversette, 2,947 meters, nearly 3,000 feet higher than the lowest pass. Others claim the Col de Clapier or Mont Cenis would have spared more lives. But the Traversette fits the ancient descriptions: a narrow defile, cliffs pressing in, a summit where the whole Po Valley lies exposed beneath the clouds. In 2019, a team led by Rousset ran digital models, least-cost paths, elevation profiles, and climate reconstructions. The numbers favored Traversette. Archaeologists found ancient charcoal, iron shackles, even animal bones in the rock falls. Traces of a desperate march were left behind in the ice. The decision was not made by maps or debates. It was made by the scouts, men who vanished into the mist, then returned with frost on their beards and terror in their eyes. They pointed up. Hannibal listened. He chose the hardest way. Not because it was wise, but because it was open. The only corridor not yet closed by Rome, by winter, by fate. The army turned toward the highest pass, the last barrier before Italy. The pass narrows to a throat of broken stone. Avalanche debris, heaps of shattered rock, blocks the only way forward. Men stare at the wall. Some drop to their knees, exhausted, hands raw from hauling ropes and axes. Behind them, the dead pile up. Men lost to falls, to cold, to hunger. Horses slip and vanish into the mist. The elephants sway, trembling, their hides streaked with blood and frost. The survivors number barely half the force that left Spain. 24,000 gone. 26,000 left, if the count still matters. The engineers gather timber from the slopes, pine and oak stripped bare by desperate hands. They build pyres against the rock face, stacking logs higher than a man. Flames roar through the night, licking at the stone, turning black to red. The heat cracks the granite, splits it along old fault lines. When the fire burns low, amphorae of sour wine, maybe vinegar, maybe just legend, are hurled onto the glowing stone. Steam explodes in the darkness. The stone groans, fractures, buckles. Iron levers, hammered by frozen fists, bite into the gaps. Men grunt, heave, curse. The army becomes a labor gang, each swing a gamble between hope and collapse. Archaeologists find charcoal in the fissures. Thermoluminescence dates it to 218 BC, traces of acid in the runoff. The work takes days. Fingers split, backs break, no one sleeps. Night after night, the wind howls through the pass, carrying off the weak. They will not turn back. They will not stop. At dawn, a path opens, barely wide enough for a man and his courage. The army stumbles through, battered but unbroken. On the far side, Italy waits. So close the survivors can taste it. So far, their dead will never see it. 218 BC. The river valleys of northern Italy shudder as Hannibal's battered army spills from the Alps, starved, half frozen, but alive. Rome expects a broken force, easy prey for the legions. Instead, the fog at Trebia hides something new: elephants, tusks gleaming, charging through the mist. Roman lines buckle and men trample each other to escape beasts they have never seen. Panic spreads faster than the cold. Hannibal's cavalry sweeps the flanks and Gauls strike from the rear. In a single morning, 30,000 Romans fall or scatter. The shock ripples outward. A year later, Lake Trasimene. Hannibal lures the Romans into a narrow valley and then slams shut the trap. The sun never rises on the Roman camp. 15,000 die before noon. No warning, no escape. The Senate calls for prayers. Cannae, 216 BC. Rome gathers its might, 80,000 men, the largest army it has ever fielded. Hannibal offers them the open plain. He lets them push his center back, then his wings close in. Roman soldiers die in place, packed so tight they cannot lift their swords. 50,000 bodies left in a single field. 3 battles, 3 disasters. Rome, undefeated for generations, reels from blow after blow. The impossible march has paid off. The city trembles, but Hannibal does not march on Rome. Not yet. Victory on the battlefield did not mean victory in the war. Hannibal's army, once 50,000 strong, now counted barely half that. The LPS had claimed more than Roman steel ever would. Supplies lost, siege engines abandoned, elephants dead or dying. What survived was a force built for movement, not for taking cities. Rome, battered but unbroken, responded in kind. The Senate called up new legions every year, fresh recruits, fresh resolve. While Hannibal's men bled out on Italian soil, Rome's numbers swelled. The city turned to Fabius Maximus, a man who understood patience. He refused to meet Hannibal in open battle. He shadowed the Carthaginian columns, cut off their foragers, burned the fields behind them. No glory, no grand victory, just slow starvation. Carthage, far away, sent few reinforcements. Political rivals at home, a navy stretched thin, no way to replace what the Alps had taken. Hannibal's genius could win battles, but not the war of numbers. The gamble of the march became a trap. The very mountains that stunned Rome now hemmed his army in, too few to finish what they had started. No wall of stone, snow, or hubris stays unbroken forever. Today, every fortress faces its own Alps. As leaders build new barriers, Hannibal's march reminds us that confidence is never immunity. The impossible is only impossible until someone proves it is not. What boundaries do we trust, and who waits beyond them?